Thanks a lot, Vladimir, for the introduction. Thanks for having me. Really happy and excited to be here and presenting this subject, which is one of my passion. As you said, being a product manager for the last 12 years, and in all honesty, it's been quite an interesting, chaotic, and exciting journey. When I started, there was no real framework, and even today, when you look at it, there is still some debate and definition about what is it to be a product manager, what is a product leader, what they have to do. And took me some time to find my own style, to find my way of leading teams, and be successful at my role. Went through experimentation, reading, studying over companies, over leaders, what they were doing, which helped me structure my own thoughts and help me structure my role. And so there is a lot of things that I wish I knew, and this is why it will have saved me time if I knew those things, and I want to share them with you. I'm in the process of summarizing a framework and put it in the book, but it's a long time away before it comes out, and so I just want to share some topics that I will write about. And so the first thing I want to talk about is when I say effective, what does it mean in terms of product leader? And the best definition is producing the intended result. So it's also producing a decided, a desired, or decisive effect. And as product leader, we are in a market, especially in technology, that moves really fast. There is a lot of competition, a lot of startups that are coming out each day. And we have a limited amount of resources that are available to us. So being effective is really important. And we need to make the most out of these resources and be performant as much as possible. Because as product leader, we have a responsibility in our hands. Whether you're a junior product manager or in a more senior role where you will have even more responsibilities, the company that you're working for is expecting something from you. And so the result that you try to reach, whether it's the roadmap that you're trying to put in place, whether it's some feature that you want to develop, has to be done the best way possible. And this is why it's really important as a product leader to care about that. Also, when you're in a product company, you're kind of in the middle of a company. You're kind of in the center because the product is the center of the company. Everybody is looking at the product. So sales, marketing, support, operation will look at the product, will use it, and you will share the concern. They will share with you the problems that they have. They will share the needs. And so this is why being a product leader is really important, and you have to develop certain skill personally to be able to be effective in that. And so the starting point is you. We read a lot about, what kind of skills do you need? We read a lot about, what kind of hard skills do you need? How do you do a roadmap? What is the agile framework? Or depending on your role, what you have to do. But there is not a lot of time that is spent on the person itself. And you need to be centered, develop yourself, and grow as a professional and also as a human being. So I'm going to talk about two books in this presentation, but one of the books that changed a little bit the way I'm looking at stuff, it's Delivering Happiness. Delivering Happiness has been written by Tony Hsieh, which is the CEO of Zappos. For people that know them, it's a company that sells shoes. So it's not a tech company. It's not like a exciting social media or AI company. The thing though is that by building a company the way he wanted, he sold it for $1 billion to Amazon. And Amazon copied a lot of his things. So when we talk about leadership, this is one of the books that I really tell people to read. There's a second one that I will talk about a bit later. And so as I was saying, you're the starting point of everything. So which means that as a leader, you're at the center. You're at the center of your team. You're at the center of your product. You're at the center also of the company, as I was saying. And it's an ongoing process. So it's not something that is done. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You have to learn a lot about yourself, and you have to learn a lot about what you're doing to be able to do it the more effective way. So it took me time to really like reflect on what I was doing and why I was doing it. And this is why the first point that you see on the right is the personality. You have to ask yourself who you are as a person. And what I mean by that is that you have really to go through an exercise where you define, your traits, what are the positive and negative traits that you have. It's something that you can work on in the future, but it's really good to go from a starting point. You need to describe yourself. How will you describe yourself? That's a good question. You need to take the time to do this. If it's really hard for you to, be objective about who you are as a person, you can ask your best friend, you can ask your family, you can ask your colleagues, and you can ask for traits that how they will define you. This will give you also a starting point on who you are. But also, when I talk about personality, I talk about what brings you joy, what brings you happiness, what you don't like. I think it's really important for people to be true to themselves and to have a real identity when they're working. So for example, on my side, I care about sustainability. I care about the effect that the product has on people's life. And this is why I don't work for a certain type of companies, because I will not necessarily agree with the decision that are taken. When you're working with a product, you have a lot of power on people's life when you look at it. And this is why it's really important that your values match also the work you're doing. And spending time on the personality, your personality, gives you everything for the first dimension and the second one. The second thing is the soft skills. So obviously I could make a list of the soft skills that you need to have. Obviously motivation, passion, communication, negotiation. It's something that is it's not an option. You need to develop them. But there is one thing that I think that there is two things that we forget, which is curiosity. I think when you have curiosity, you can really make a lot of things happen. And this can be seen like really easily. So for example, when I start a new job, I always have the same process, which is talking with everyone almost inside the company. Even if it's a big company, you can talk to a lot of people. And if you're really curious, if you're really genuine in what you're doing, people love talking about their job, love talking about the story of a product, why they're there, what they like about the product, what they don't like. And it's the same with the users. When you go see them, if you're curious about what they're doing, you will learn a lot. And this is why I think for me that the curiosity, communication skill, obviously, that goes with it, it's really important as a product leader, because it's also what will help you as a foundation for your team. And finally, it's about caring. So that goes with it. So what I mean by that is the fact that curiosity is one thing and will give you some answers on what you're looking for. We'll give you a bit of history and everything. But caring is also about when you're listening to people, do you care about the product that you're building? Do you care about their life? Do you care about the impact that you're having? Now, the third point that you have to grow on that is having a discipline and a routine. It's really important because you need to structure your days and your week in a way that will be the most efficient for you and find a certain balance in your life. I like to say that as product managers and as product leader, we manage frustrations more than anything. Everyone comes to us with a frustration that they have in their current life, and you have to deal with those emotions. You have to deal with negative emotions, you have to deal with positive emotions, which can be really hard on yourself, especially that you will feel sometimes that you're alone. Everybody is looking at you for an answer. This is why the discipline can be really important. What I mean by discipline is that, and it's only you that can answer that. I can give you what I do, which is, for example, meditate in the morning. That's really important for me. I go on walks during the day without technology. It gives me a break, and it helps me, just breathe a little bit and think about what is happening, and also what I need to tackle during the day. I go to the gym, which is something that helps me also with the meditation. to think about stuff, and it's time for me again. And I go for runs. Now, you have to accept certain stuff. Like meditation, I only started that last year. I didn't start that from the beginning of my career. I tried multiple times. It's not something that was working for me. Now I felt that I was in a position where it was bringing me something. And this is where you need to listen to yourself. You need to listen to what you're going through, and you need to listen how to evolve in that.
That's pretty interesting. Can you actually elaborate on that, how you started your meditation?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I tried multiple times. It was not easy. I think the first time really I tried meditation is when I had a dog for the first time, if I'm honest. You know, you have to walk with a dog, which is you know, something that you can't, it's not optional. And so I was going in these long walks without technology, and it helped me like think more about you know, the day I was going through, but at night. What I did on top of that is that I did a meditation in the morning when I wake up. When you wake up, it's the best time to, you know, to just not getting anything in. It's really important that you're not like consuming, for example, social media, or you're not consuming emails, or you're not opening your Slack, especially if you have a remote team in different, because suddenly you will become totally stressed right away at the beginning of the day. So taking a 10-15 minutes to meditate, to think, to just relax, to just think about the day ahead, it's really useful. It helped me bringing a certain peace inside that. And as any habit, so you're gonna, if someone won the book Hooked, it takes a bit of time to create this habit. So you have to at least force yourself during 66 days. It's approximately that. Every day, you try to build that inside you. You try to build this routine about waking up in the morning, not checking your phone. First thing that you do is meditating. Use an app. You know, there is plenty of apps out there that can help you, that have a 30-day meditation course, 30-day meditation program, or even over on Instagram that do it live. And this will help you have the day starting the right way. And afterwards, what I do on top of meditating is that I write right away. I have a book that is next to my bed. It's a small notebook, and I write during approximately 5 to 10 minutes.
What do you write about?
It really depends. I mean, we all have answers during the night sometimes as product manager, because we think too much, and there is like the subconscious that is working for us. So generally, I write about whether what do I feel at the time, or whether what do I feel about writing maybe during the day, or about something I'm working on. It really depends what you have currently in your mind.
Okay, thanks. Actually, we have one question which is relevant to the current slide you were talking about managing the team, and when you onboard a new product manager in your team. By the way, how many product managers do you have in your team? What should they do during the first 60 to 90 days when they join this team?
So the team is something I will talk about in the next slides. We can talk about it now, but I will prefer to talk about it in the next slide, because it will work whether it's product managers or developers, designers, depending on your role.
All right.
So everything starts by you, right? As I was saying, and finally, business acumen. So what I mean by business acumen is that you need to become an expert, you know, in business. You need to become an expert in your industry. You need to become an expert in the product that you're building. And the best way to do that, if you don't have any business skills or sales skills, it's to go with salespeople, to tag along with them, participate, you know, in sales pitch, and see how you can contribute as a product person. Also, it's to go to speaking event conferences, you know, that are in your domain. There is a lot of webinar that is happening, and this is something that you can develop. But as a product manager, you should be interested in the business you're working in. How can you contribute to the bottom line? How you can contribute to, for most businesses, how can you contribute to bring some new revenue, improve the MRR or the ARR? This is things that you should care about. And if it's something that you're not familiar with, obviously there is still courses that you can take. An MBA, it's good, but it can be expensive. I'm pretty sure there's people in your company that can explain to you a lot of stuff, which is whether financial, and this is part also of the onboarding. This is part of the onboarding. A product manager, whether it's you that is joining a company or someone new in your team, should spend some time with all the aspects of a company, all the departments, to understand how they work, to understand what are their concerns, to understand also all the basics and the foundation that will help them to do a better job. So since we were talking about it, I want to talk about your team and how you can create meaningful relationship in a space that will enable them to be happy and performant. And this is where I will talk about the second book, which is the book from Dave Logan, where he talks about tribal leadership and how tribes and leaders works together, but how as a leader you have an influence on your team. And so the first point, it's always starting by you, right? So before it was more you as a product leader, what you want to do personally, what you like, what you don't like. Here it's exactly the same thing, but it's more on the relation with people and also what you're expecting from your team. We're not all the same. We don't have the same values. We don't have the same expectation. We don't have the same experiences. And so there is some stuff that we could have seen that match more with our type of leadership. So for example, I like to have fun. It's something that is really important. And I always go through the same process, whether I'm joining a team that exists, whether I'm creating a team, whether people on board during the year. So I know what I like, what I don't like. I know myself. I know the type of leadership style that works for me and works for most of the team. And most of the team I join, I increase the performance that they add, whether it's as a more like kind of a product owner role, or whether it's more as a product management with designers and with other product managers. So it's setting up the right expectation. So what I mean by that is the fact that when you're joining a team or when you're building a team, you should have one-to-one to learn about everyone that is joining the team, or to learn about everyone that is part of your team. This is not a one-sided conversation, it's a two-sided. So what I mean by that is that you should learn as much as possible from a person that you're directing, and the person should learn about you. And what I mean by that is that, what do you expect from them? So if, for example, you have meetings, you expect them obviously to participate, you expect them to be themselves, you expect them to be respectful of other ones, and you expect them to have a certain language also inside the meetings that you have with the team. And all of that is really important. But also you set clear expectation about their objective with a company. So for example, you want them to spend time with sales, you want them to spend time with marketing, you want them to spend time with finance. You want them to understand what are their impacts on others. One thing that I see that doesn't happen a lot is people spending time with support, for example, where I think it's one of the biggest, where you get a lot of insights from your customers without talking to them directly. Understanding support, supporting them, but they know, this team know that you're there also for them. It's really helpful for you as a product manager or as a product leader, or whether you're just joining the company or not. And so what was the question again? Sorry, we come back to.
So the question was about what the product manager should do during his or her first 60 to 90 days since joining the team. What kind of things they need to do to achieve the success, and what are the success indicators? So
the first thing, as I said, is learning about the company. That's really useful to understand where the company is coming from, what is the history, why they're at the position they're in. Also understand about the team. So what I mean by that is what I said, spending one-to-one with the different people in the team, and with the different departments. And so depending on the size of the company, but giving you some example, when I was in companies that could be like 300 or 400 people, I could speak during the first 2 weeks to almost 60 to 100 people. You really, as I said, you have to be curious. You don't have to be shy, and people will. This is kind of a funny thing, is that you don't have to prepare beforehand who you're going to talk to. Generally, when you talk to someone, they will introduce you to someone else that you have to talk to, or they will give you other names. So it's almost like kind of a, you just have to follow the path that they are giving you. And so suddenly you will speak to a lot of people, and you will cover almost all the leader or all the expert in the company. And then it's just to dig down in some stuff that you will have to spend maybe more time with certain people. On top of it, obviously talking to users as much as you can. But when I say talking to users, that generally people think about, they think about talking to them about the product. I think what will be good, especially if you're joining a new company with a new product, is that you go talk to them in a curious way to understand how they work, to be interested in their daily life, and interested about why they're using this product. And so this will help you have a good understanding where you are, and that you can then build yourself up from that, and start to think about how you can own this role. It will give you also a good relation with everyone. So which means that when you have a question, when there's something you don't understand, where there's business, whatever can come to your mind or whatever can come to your way, you know already who to talk to. What I like to do in those first weeks is have a little, again, a little cheat sheet somewhere where I start to write down the people that I talk to, the people that I know what they can answer for me, and also start to write down some stuff that are more personal. Because you need to create a relation with those people. You need to create a connection that is not just about jobs. So
what kind of personal things do you mean?
If you have a family, you have kids, what they did before, if they traveled, what do they like? Do they have a hobby, whether it's just running or biking, or it's going on the countryside and hiking, this kind of stuff, because it will help you create connection with them. And it's not just, we have to remember that as product managers and product leaders, we work with people. And these people are also human beings in their life. And it's quite important. When I say about caring, this is what I mean. You don't know what is happening in people's life most of the time. And some people will be less performant, for example, from time to time, or they will not be there during a meeting, or they will not be available. And I think it's our responsibility as a product leader to go see them and say, look, is there something that is not working? Is there something that is happening? Is there something that I can help you with? And understanding that.
Yes, absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah,
especially it makes sense to connect with developers you're working with, because sometimes developers are creative specialty. So it's pretty important to make sure that you are connected to this person, not only from the professional perspective, but also from the human perspective.
Yeah, and it will make everything more efficient. And this is what I mean by, when you have expectation and agreement also with people, you will not spend most of the time with them. You will see them maybe, depending on your role, you can see them, multiple times a week or one time a week. So you have to imagine that if you have only one meeting where you have a creative workshop, they will need to be as much as easy as possible. And creating this connection helps that. They help them to come to this meeting and be like totally relaxed. They can say anything. They're not going to be judged. They're not, they're part of a family, if I could say. And so it's important to think about your communication style in there. There is 3 mode of persuasion that you can look at, ethos, pathos, and logos. and you will have to use them depending on the meeting that you have. You will have to use them depending on the people that you talk to. So for example, pathos is about emotions. So when do you use more emotions when you try to convince people? When do you use more proof and logic? So for example, if you're in a strategic meeting and you're trying to convince people about the direction that you're taking for a strategy, maybe they will need more proof and more logic behind the decision and less about guts. And they will not, your position as a product leader will not matter that much. So proof is more important in that side. Where you're giving a narrative, where you're giving a story, where you're trying to convince your team about what you're doing, maybe emotions will become more important than proof. It really depends on the situation. So this is why you have to think about it and play with this different style of communication and mode of persuasion.
Can you maybe recommend some book or some, I don't know, video where those techniques are described?
So is The Rhetoric by Aristotle. So this is the kind of interesting thing that is about your when you grow as a product manager, is that you have to understand overfills. Being a product leader is amazing because you can work in any industry. You can work with a lot of different people. You can work with a lot of different cultures. It's not one-sided. It's not you will not just work with I don't know, high level, or you will work really with a diversity of people, which makes it super interesting. One of the biggest challenges is to understand people, to understand ourselves first, and then to understand people. So you will have to care about psychology. You will have to care about sociology, anthropology, culture, because there could be some clash, for example, in your team. I had a team where we had like 6 nationalities, I think, from Eastern Europe to the US. And obviously when people talk, especially when English is a second language, the meaning of things is not necessarily the word that they use. And so you have to navigate inside that, and you have sometimes to be more around mediation between people. Right? And this is where knowing yourself and controlling your emotion and being centered is really important as a product leader, because you will have always this role. At the same time, we need to be assertive and we need to take decision. At the same time, we need to take a step back. We need to be there to facilitate stuff. We need to be there to direct stuff. We need to be just in a certain way. And so expanding your knowledge around psychology, sociology, other fields also, like sales, as I said, is really important. Finally, the involvement that you have in the rituals. So what I mean by ritual is that obviously you have the meetings that you have, that you need to have, whether it's product roadmap meetings, stand-ups. What is important also to have is, and this is where you have to find a balance also with your team, is having meetings that are not about the job. So what I mean by that is, for example, you could, especially if your team is remote, since you don't have a coffee place where you meet, you could have like coffee through Zoom and organize that every afternoon or every 2 afternoons, and it's completely optional. But it's good that people come and talk about anything. They talk about TV shows, they talk about movies, it creates also a connection between people. But it's not just about, we forget that a little bit in the digital space where people start to become remote, is that we need also this type of connection. And it's the responsibility of a leader to bring this type of connection. So creating, and we need to create that and put them in the calendar. It's not you can't expect it to happen just magically. It has to be put in the calendar. You have to have people that really manage that. And it's not necessarily you that has to initiate everything, but at the beginning you should have allies. You should find allies that helps you with that, and eventually someone will take it off and the rest of the team will take it off, and it will become a ritual that is inside the team. And the last point is being fun and caring. because even if it's a job, everybody should enjoy the work that they're doing. Being silly is important. Having fun, laughing. It's something for me that it's not optional. And this is where you will find the difference between the teams. This is where you will have, for example, in certain companies, some teams that are capable to work at night together, to have Zooms at night, or working during the weekend all together and coming the next day and being like super happy about it. Because they're like, oh yeah, we did that yesterday night and it was really great. And I had a lot of moments like that with the team I managed. And it's something, again, that comes from the leaders of a team. It doesn't matter what is your position. It's something that whether you push someone to do, because you know that they're like that, knowing them will tell you, what they're capable to do. And it will bring an identity to your team, to your tribe, and also to your leadership style. So I think we are at the 25 minutes. I don't know if there is questions around all this subject.
Thanks a lot, Phil, for the presentation. And yes, we have many questions to answer. So just on the first question that we had and you discussed already, I wanted to add one point here that I also recommend to product managers who join their job and during the first 60-90 days really dig very deep down into the product and make sure that you understand how everything works. Then it will be much easier for you to work going forward with the team. And then after, let's say, 3 or 6 months or a year, people will be already less tolerant when you'll be asking very basic questions. So make sure that you spend those 60 to 90 days to ask 5 whys. If you ask 1 why, you are being explained how it works, then dig even deeper to understand how it works from the backend. Ask the architecture of this feature, ask about the user feedback on this feature, talk to business team, talk to marketing team. Make sure that you have this feature covered from all of the aspects of the product.
Yeah, totally. Support also is a good way to understand that, because when you have bugs, incidents, you will have to dig down on why this is happening. So it's a good way also to approach that. At the beginning, yeah, you will have no answer, but going in the analysis of a product of why the bug is happening or why the incident is happening, why a customer doesn't understand something and is using the product in another way, will give you also a lot of hints on how the product is working.
Right, exactly. Also, probably many people heard of a company called Intercom. This is like a customer relationship management tool. And they have a special day once a month where everyone in the company talks to users, even the CEO of the company. So make sure that you talk to your users. We have another question from Irsan. How do you manage user expectation versus company team's vision on the product?
Customer expectation. I think this is where it's always difficult. So managing expectation from the business, the team. First of all, you have to be honest with your team on what is happening in the business, but you don't have to give them the pressure that you receive as a product leader. So what I mean by that is the fact that there is certain things that happen in the company, whether it's financial, whether it's on sales, and the pressure is coming to you, obviously, to solve the issue, but it's not your team that has necessarily to solve then the issue. It's something that you have to think about in how you're going to develop the product and what is the strategy that you want to have. But this expectation have to be said to your team, but they shouldn't feel the pressure coming down to them directly. You have to be like kind of an umbrella to your team, and be careful in the way that you're communicating and all that. So again, listening to yourself, being careful in not being negative, always being passionate, motivated, motivate your team. It's really important. Now, expectation about your customer is something really different. I think, again, if you're honest with them on what you're going to do, why you do it, and why you're not doing certain stuff they're asking, it's really important. All the users will ask you for a number of features that doesn't make sense, just because they read about it, just because they thought about it. But what is sometimes good to do, and I like to do it, is asking them why they want to do it. Just going deep down, not just receiving why they want, what do they want, asking them why do they want to do it. What is the problem that they're trying to solve? Going back to a problem that they have. Sometimes they will notice that they don't need the feature, which is really interesting, because you're like, okay, so it's something that was, so they came by themselves to the conclusion that they don't need it, which is the best way to say that you're not going to do something. The second aspect is more that you're going to have an understanding of what is the problem that they're trying to solve. And you may have already an idea in mind on how to solve the problem another way.
Yes,
so
agree.
Opening the discussion is always the best way. Being always skeptical about what is happening, not necessarily trusting your user, not necessarily trusting the sales, not necessarily trusting the marketing. Being pragmatic, it's good on that. But again, always with a curious mind, always coming humble. That I like to say that go in a way that you know nothing. Even if you have been in the business for 6 months, a year, even if you know a lot how the product works and what should work, go always in a way that it's your first day and try to understand again. Because maybe there is something new that happened in the business. Maybe there is something that changed in the market that you were not aware of. And so always acting like that, it will be always better in the way that you're received from the user perspective.
Yes, I agree. As you said, many users, they come up with their own solutions to the problem, but the actual reason why they need the solution can be different. So make sure that you always talk to your users, and that you involve customer development techniques, that you proactively reach out to those users, and don't ask yes/no questions. Always ask open questions, and validate your hypothesis, not based on 1 or 2 users' feedback. And if it's possible, talk to 10, 20 users, and then make your conclusion.
Yes.
Another question we have, okay, go ahead.
No, go for it, It was totally that.
The second question that we have is, since the job of product manager involves giving insights, correcting and suggesting the features, how to communicate effectively with the tech and UX team? How does product manager bring in all of the insights and the features should effectively communicate with the tech and UX? Basically, the communication skills that you talked about.
Yeah, the communication skill and the storytelling. So this is a shift on mine I have during the 12 years I've been in the field. Is that the more you're involved in the decision, and the more you explain your thought process to the UX, to anyone, doesn't have to be just the developers, but the more you explain your thought process, not necessarily the solution that you want to build, the easier it is for everyone to understand it, and being as much transparent as possible. We, as product leaders, we forget sometimes that we are receiving a lot of information. We're consuming a lot of information, analyzing it, and reach a conclusion based on everything that we have in mind, based on all the insight that we received, whether it's users, the market, just your own thinking, creativity, looking at competitors. Not everyone in the business does that. Obviously, it's your role as a product manager, as a product leader, to do it. And so you need to bring people to the same level of understanding that you have. And this is where generally it's easier than afterwards to think about the solution with the team, to be creative about it, because everybody understands the same thing. Again, if you have a good relationship with your team, if you have some expectation from them, so which is, ask question, challenge me, don't agree necessarily with everything I'm doing or with everything I'm saying, you will have always a good communication and good relation with your team. So you will not have those kind of problems. But sometimes also, if you see, if your team is also capable to push back, and what I mean by that is the fact that if they see that they don't have enough information to work with, it can be good also to just back off from the discussion, go back to your own work that you have to do, bring more insights with a question they ask you, and then start the discussion again. It's always good, to stop things, to say no, to take the time sometimes, to build something better.
Yes, absolutely. That product managers should encourage tech team, developers, UX designers to push back and to ask more questions in order to understand the business value and the user value of this feature, the impact on revenue, the impact on the user efficiency, because it's essential that sometimes developers understand the business value of the feature, because some developers, they need to be motivated to work on something, and they get motivated when they understand what is the value this feature is bringing to the users.
Yeah, totally.
Another question that we have is from Prasant. It's, how does product management blend user customer interests with the other, sometimes at cross purposes, goal of generating revenue and achieving the target? How do you blend this?
Yeah, it's a juggle. So what I mean by that is the fact that obviously you should listen to your users. More data that you have, the better it is. So obviously the business want to develop in a strategic way, and you should understand that. But you have always to think about product market fit, right? So where you have to build a product that your market wants. Market is evolving, and your business model, your product model, it's something that is not immutable. So it's something that can change through time, and the business has to understand it. So the discussion around what the business wants versus what the users want, it's always a discussion that needs to happen. Obviously, it needs to make sense for the business. So what I mean by that is the fact that even if a lot of users want something, but it's not the value of the company, or it doesn't help reach a vision that you have, it may be something that you're going to park for quite some time. So sometimes you will have to say no to the business. Sometimes you will have to say no to the users. And I think this is where you have to be transparent and honest with your user. If you say directly to them, no, it's not something that we're going to do, and you don't let it open as a discussion, we're going to think about it or something like that, they will understand it. I never seen a user saying, I've done a lot of interviews, I've done a lot of meetings, presenting features, asking for feedback and everything. I never seen a user. I was at the beginning, afraid of saying no to users, because it's something that, we don't teach you. We say, oh yeah, the user is king and the client is king, so they can have everything that they want. But what I learned through experiences that if you say no, they will be okay with that. They will be totally okay with that, because you have said to them like how your product is going to evolve, what is the narrative that you have, and they bought also the narrative and the story around the product. A future is not necessarily going to change that.
Yes. Another question is from Ayush. How do you create a connection with the development team that is not very friendly? I love that question.
That's a good one. Yeah, I love this one. It's a really good one. How do you create a connection that is not really friendly? I think you have to, as I said, you have to understand the people that you work with. Some people are more receptive, for example, to teasing. Some people are more receptive, to call out directly in meetings. Some people just want to be quiet. but I think that it's a work that you have to do. You have to push yourself to bring those people with a team, and there is still a bit of social pressure. So what I mean by that is the fact that if you see a team where everybody's having fun and everybody's outgoing and everything, even if you're more passive, you're not super friendly, you will be kind of pressured by the team in a certain way, and you will want to participate in that in your way. But that's the thing, though, is that everybody should keep their identity. It's not, you're not forcing people to tell jokes, but just because you love like that certain people tell jokes. You don't have to force people to talk about movies. Some people just like to participate. So you have to let people being themselves. But yeah, it can be really hard. It can be really tiring to have a team that can be not as friendly as other ones. So yeah, and again, you have to find allies, because people respect each other, right? So not everything should come from you, and you have to give responsibility also to other people in your team, because there is other leaders than you, and everybody has to understand that. Obviously you're the product manager or senior product manager, and so people will respect you for that. But some people, for example, in the development team, they will respect other developers because they are better than them at certain skill set. And it's more a skill set respect than just a position or something like that. So finding also understanding the relationship between people and what they like seeing in others can help you also create more friendliness inside the team.
True, agree. Also, please accept, guys, the fact that some people are introverts and some people are extroverts, and find an approach to deal with them. And as you feel said in your presentation, one of the leadership skills is to have a personal connection with the person. So when you are during your onboarding stage, try to get to know people, not only from their professional perspective, but from a personal perspective, to understand what are their hobbies, what are they enjoying to do during their spare time, and so on. And another technique to approach the development team who are not very friendly is to get to know product in a better way. So when you are becoming an expert in this product, and now you already have a pretty good understanding of what these people do, then they will let you closer in their circle and will become eventually friendlier with you. Another question we have is how can one manage conflict with a team and drive the team to an agreeable solution?
Conflict is good. That's the first thing I will say. Conflict is good. It means that people, what I mean conflict is good, I mean good conflict, right? When it's respectful, when it's about, the goal is to reach the purpose, the goal is to reach the best solution. People will not necessarily agree on the solution. They will not necessarily agree on the approach, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's something that should be recognized first, appreciated by you as a leader, if it stays again in the values that you have said between people. So this is where I was saying that sometimes you have to have a more active role. Sometimes you have to have a more passive role. In this one, it's where you have to have a role of mediation, where you have to facilitate the discussion between people, understanding again why some people are against the approach, why some people are for this approach, giving everybody the chance to speak about it. But as I said, it's something that is good. So it shouldn't be approached with negativity. It should be approached with positivity, where you should say, reinforce the fact that you're happy, that you're, so concerned, and that there is kind of these things emerging inside the team. I think this is where gamification comes a bit in, where you always reinforce what you want to see. What you don't want to finish is that people don't talk necessarily in the team, even if they don't agree. And then after the meeting, we're going to talk about it between them, or only two people, and some people will have resent you want that every decision that is taken as a team. All the team is responsible. All the team should be backing every decision that is taken. And so this is why, again, you need to create this platform. You need to create this safe space where people can have this kind of tough discussion and continue it as long as it needs to be. If you see that you have 1 hour meeting and it lasts for more than 30 minutes, go back, go another meeting, discuss again. Like, don't be afraid to push the discussion to happen.
Great, thanks. And we have one more question, and then we'll be choosing the best question. Sorry, guys, that we were not able to respond to all of the questions during the time we have, but you mentioned psychology techniques. What are some good sources to learn about tricks to tweak user psychology?
Tweak user psychology?
Yes.
For me, the principle of gamification are a good start, because it gives you, I think it gives a good understanding of what users want, and also the mechanism that you can put in place to I will not say trick users, because I don't like the word trick. Engage users, I would use more. So when I talk about psychology, for example, is understanding the different type of player. So if you look at Bartle divided people in 4: achievers, killers, explorers, and socializers, saying that population and user enters in one of those fields. So most of the population are socializers, approximately 80%. Killers, approximately 1%, is the people that play PvP in games. It's also salespeople generally. This gives you a beginning of an understanding of the type of people you're building the product for. And so don't expect, for example, for killers to cooperate, because it's the goal of a killer is to say, I win and you lose. So there is no, don't try to push them, try to push this competition as much as possible. So this is a good start, and this is where gamification can help you a lot, understanding the psychology and how to engage users. It talks about activity loop that you have in the hooked model from Nereal. Talks about the different type of reward, talk about purpose, mastery, expertise, about all the social interaction, your achievement personally, the world, and then your tribe also. So this is why it's I think if you read a good book about that, or if you read if you look at some talks about it, it's really interesting.
Thanks, Philippe, for the presentation and for answering all those questions. Guys, on some of the